This morning, the Chief Executive, the Group Chief Executive of Qatar Airways, His Excellency Akbar Al Baker. Well, Akbar, it's good to see you again. And I think that we met, first of all, 3 years ago. And, I don't think there's a lack of things to talk about that have happened with Qatar Airways in 3 years. So maybe we can just start off by talking a bit about how has business been in the last year? I mean, we know globally there's been ups and downs with the airline business. What have been like the highs and the lows?
Business has been good for us, except that our performance was not what we expected due to the delay of the 4 A380s. You know, it was nearly 6 months
Yes.
delayed whilst we were bickering with Airbus on the quality of the product. And at the same time, we had delays in the delivery of 787s, again due to quality issues. So this putting together, the sales performance that we expected didn't happen. So our profit would be less than what I was estimating.
Okay. And when is your sort of financial year end? Is it?
Our year has already
now?
ended 1 month ago, because our year is our financial
Normal
year
financial year.
From the 1st of April to the 31st
End
of
of
March the following year.
Okay. And will you be saying more about that in the coming weeks? More detail on
Yes,
those
we will.
results?
We
Okay.
will. Once our accounts are certified by the auditors, then we will
look forward to hearing more
talk
about
more
that.
about it. Yes.
And in terms of market forces, one thing I was wondering about, I mean, a number of routes that you operate are influenced by, well, start again. The airline, of course, you have an influence on your results in terms of oil price. Many airlines have benefited with oil being softer, depending on whether you're hedged or not. But the other side of that, a number of routes you fly are, a lot of the traffic is oil industry related. So how has that balance panned out?
Well, a lot of people think that because the oil price has dropped by 50%, so also our ticket price should go down by 50%. They don't realize that when the oil prices were high, our margins were absolutely eroded and we were into negative territory. Fortunately, we were hedged, so we benefited from a stable oil price calculation into our cost structure. However, other than that, our growth has been unimpeded. We have added 12 routes into our network, and this year is going to be the same. We are going to be very aggressive the way we expand into new routes. Every aircraft that is delivered to Qatar Airways is already programmed to which destinations it's going to go. Qatar Airways aircraft starts flying immediately it is delivered. Unlike other airlines, we start.
Can't afford to sit around for a month or two.
We put our aircraft into commercial operation within a maximum of 6 hours after it lands at Doha at Hamad International.
Oh, that's impressive stuff. So talking again on the aircraft themselves, I think I'm right in saying you're the only airline in the world that has the 3 newest aircraft in the world. The 380s you mentioned, the 787, and the only airline still currently with the A350. Let's just ask you a bit about each of the 3. The 380 is not new. I mean, they celebrated 10 years since its first flight. It had some teething problems earlier on, but has it been a smooth service entry for you? You got yours delivered for a start with the wing modifications already done. You didn't have to go for a retrofit like, for example, Emirates.
We had wing modifications done. We had the door issue resolved. We had also the engines upgraded.
Right.
So our aircraft is really the latest what you could expect. However, as you know, we were the first operator in the Middle East of the 787. We are still today the only operator of the Airbus A350, and we will be the only operator for a period of time on the Airbus A320neos that
Right.
will be delivered to us between September or October this year.
So even they're coming in this year on a short haul.
Yes.
And you're in touch with Airbus, the development program is going according to plan on that?
Absolutely, and Qatar Airways gets very much involved in the spec and design at the development stage of any aircraft that we buy. And we are doing the same with Boeing on the 777-9X.
Well, with your knowledge of his different aircraft, I had Sir Tim Clark was in the hot seat, as it were, yesterday, and I was asking him about the 380. As you know, he speaks very positively about the 380. He'd like to see it redeveloped. He acknowledged a lot of other airlines he believes haven't yet woken up to the value of that plane. Do you share his view that that will take off more than it has done, or is it going to remain in the low levels of orders?
I always share his views because he has been in this industry before me. So, you know, I have to always agree, and we have, as you know, a very close relationship with Emirates. You have seen already the benefit of synergies that we bring when we order aeroplanes together, when we attack people together, and
I don't know if Tim would agree.
And we exchange information together. And this is a really perfect example of what even competitors can do for the benefit of each other.
But he believes that the aircraft will sell more. But another good business colleague and friend of yours, Willie Walsh, when I've spoken to him, he said, well, we're going to get 12 in BA, and I don't see us getting any more. In fact, he was quoted last week with Malaysian announcing they're going to get theirs out of the fleet, saying, well, give me two for free and I'll take them, but I'm not going to pay.
I am not going to get any more than what we already have ordered, unless there is an absolute rethink by Airbus on this aeroplane. This aeroplane has a very big potential, but Airbus will have to put their hands in their pocket to take this aircraft a step higher. If this aircraft can perform with between 10 and 15% better fuel burn, then this aircraft is really a killer for the airlines. I don't know if Airbus will be able to do it. I know from them that they are very keen to look into this. I'm sure you know that Tim has promised them more 380s,
more orders,
or at least replacement A380s. I don't want to frighten other people. You know whom I mean?
I do.
So there is a possibility that that he will replace his current fleet with the re-engined 380s if it comes into the market.
And the 787, of course, I mean, we had Boeing's Marty Benchot here on Monday, and I was surprised when I said, how long has it been in service now? When he said 3.5 years, I thought, well, time's flying. It must be a sign of my own age that time's going so quick. But how long have you had it now? Is it about 2 years?
Well, actually, we have it for coming nearly to 3 years.
Okay.
This aircraft has a lot of teething problem, as any new aircraft program. But we didn't expect that the teething problem will last so long.
Right.
It's only now that
so just settling down now.
The aircraft is coming over the bump.
Okay. So it's giving a good technical reliability now, but it took some time to get there. I think a number of airlines seem to have found that, particularly with the electrical technology.
Yeah, because the leap that that Boeing took in this program was so huge that they didn't expect. You know, they are building fighter jets with fully composite material for ages.
Yeah.
They thought that they could translate this also into a commercial aircraft, but they didn't realize how large the volume would be. And to have a complete electrical architecture in the airplane is the first of its kind. And I think that they did a huge miscalculation. In this regard, I really commend Airbus. They learned a lot from their mistakes, and they listened to customers. And when you look at when you compare the two aircraft, I mean the 350 as the introduction into service really is head and shoulders above Boeing.
And that's interesting because, I mean, you are the first in the world. So
and they immediately listened to us when we told them not to put lithium-ion batteries, to put NiCad batteries. And they listened to us. There was a weight penalty of only 80 kilos.
Okay.
So it is, you know, total passengers minus one bump on the seat.
Yeah, exactly. Now, in terms of the new aircraft on the drawing board, I mean, you said, well, the Neo is already in flight test, but you mentioned the 777X, and again, Tim was waxing lyrical about that yesterday. You have both been very involved. He said he'd been talking to them about 3 years before that was announced officially, and I guess would that be the same for yourself, Akbar?
You know, he bought 100 more aeroplanes than me, So he had the privilege of talking to them 3 years in
earlier.
advance. I only talked to them 1 year in advance.
Right.
So it is in the right proportion
Okay.
of the number of aeroplanes.
Number of aircraft ordered. Because I think that one's going to be a game changer, isn't it? I mean, the 777 has become the workhorse of long haul. The 747's seen its day.
I really think unless Airbus goes a step higher than the Dash 1000, which I think they will, the 777-9X will be the backbone of a lot of major airlines.
What do you think, by the way, about long-haul low cost? I'm going to ask you some things in maybe the UK context in a few minutes about runways and stuff, but a lot of people in the UK are saying, oh, long-haul low cost is the future. Personally, I'm a bit skeptical. I would see it as a bit more of a niche.
I am absolutely skeptical. You have many examples. You have examples of carriers in Europe that started long-haul low cost. You have AirAsia X that is struggling.
Yeah.
You can look at their aeroplanes parked in Toulouse. And Scoot is the latest one.
Yeah, Singapore.
And they are struggling, though they don't admit. And I don't want to comment about my friends in Singapore Airlines. I think it was a very unwise move on their part. This will absolutely eat into their
core
passenger profile that sits behind the premium cabins.
Okay. Let's turn to, as I described it yesterday with Tim, the elephant in the room. You know, those people I think you were alluding to earlier who maybe have some fears about yourself, your airline, and Emirates and Etihad. You're going to be in Washington a week today. We've seen this report come out. You know, I've studied it. I'm sure not as much as you. I've read it, you know, every line, at least for 54 pages. I haven't gone through all the 1,000 pages, but did it come as a surprise? Did it come out of the blue that? There's been murmurings for a long time, but to suddenly see that come out with 3 airlines behind it.
I can see the very big smile on the face of Marty over there. We are disappointed at this. I don't want to really talk too much about this subject because I'm going to meet the government officials in Washington next week. But after that, I am going to open the books and confront them. But until I have spoken to the government authorities, I don't want to preempt my discussions. But I want to say in just very clear terms that Mr. Anderson is not a patriot of his country, because what he's doing is stifling the interest of the traveling public in the United States. He is very single-mindedly looking at himself. He still feels that he's a prosecutor because he was previously a prosecutor before he came to Delta. He thinks that everybody is criminal, but he is forgetting his own backyard, what he's been up to. I would not like to preempt, but I'm not going to mince my words. I'm going to meet the press, and I think Mr. Anderson has never seen a CEO that will be so direct, so insulting, and absolutely to the point to expose him. He is working against the interest of his own country. He has no dignity. He has no ethics. He has, in my frank opinion, a weak personality, and he's only hiding behind all this nonsense, misleading his government in a big way. And I will go to their government in a very clear way, in a very precise way, in a very direct way, to show them the misleading information that is floating to them.
And they've also, in this report, the government authorities have said they've given like a 60-day time frame for input on the report. So Tim was saying yesterday, well, we're not bound to put it back. They took 2 years to prepare it. We're going to take our time to fully reply.
We will. I absolutely agree with my friend Tim. We will take our time. We need, as they did the research over 2 years, we also need 2 years to research over their drawbacks. Delta should have been, if he's talking about subsidy, then he should have been closed long time ago because he was bankrupt. If American Airlines are talking about it, they were bankrupt. US Airways, I don't know why my alliance partner is jumping into this foray. He was bankrupt twice in a period of only 18 months. United was bankrupt, so they were all bankrupt. And now they're talking about subsidies to us, whilst ours is not subsidy. Ours is proper government equity in a company that is owned by the sovereign fund of my country. So what's the problem? The problem is when you start flying 767-200s around, which is 35 years old aeroplane, stopped production 2 decades ago, fooling your customers, of course he cannot compete. So he's, screaming. But frankly speaking, I don't think that his argument will stand. I'm sure the government of United States will look at the bigger picture, the interest of their economic interest, and the thousands of jobs that our aircraft order creates in the industry, much more than he creates in Delta.
Yeah. We'll watch this space of interest a week today.
Yes, it will be very interesting.
Just to talk a little bit more widely, because as you say, you want to deal with detail next week. I posed a similar question to Tim yesterday. Is this going to really have like a tsunami effect? They may not have quite factored in exactly the more than ripples it's going to have in the industry. We've already seen in Europe IAG Airlines leaving the Association of European Airlines.
Yeah, because IAG realized that this whole getting together of airlines is actually not in the interest of developing aviation or creating more jobs, but it is used to target competition. And if anybody, let me be very honest, if anybody is screaming about competition, it should be Willie, because we have 6 frequencies to London. Emirates has 7 frequencies, all A380s to London. Etihad has, I think, 5 or 6 frequencies into London. We have an open sky with the United Kingdom. He should be the one that should be screaming the most.
They've had the most competition for the longest period of time.
Actually, he is absolutely positive about the competition, and he has no issue. So I don't know why the others have issues when a major European carrier has no issue at all. And I'm not surprised, because he has his own dignity. He is very ethically strong individual, and this is why he withdrew from AEA. So did, of course, Iberia, because they are part of IAG. Air Berlin has withdrawn. I'm sure Alitalia will withdraw.
Yeah.
So I think it will be only Mr. Tamil Kotil and a couple of others sitting on the chair in that IAE.
Well, I mean, even more interestingly, from my point of view, London bases, they haven't just left, they've gone to the other side of the floor to join the low-cost airline association, which is a different philosophy altogether, typically led in the past by Ryanair and EasyJet and airlines like that.
Exactly.
So it's very interesting. Let's just stick a bit on IAG, because when we met the first time 3 years ago, I asked you about Willie Walsh, and he's a good friend of yours. I've had the opportunity to discuss with him on a number of occasions. At that time, you hadn't joined One World. You now have joined One World, but you've gone further with IAG and actually invested in the group. Tell us about the reasons for doing both, because an alliance is one thing, but to actually invest is another. And are you gaining something more by investing that you couldn't achieve by simply being a commercial partner?
I don't know if you read in between the lines when many times I was asked a question of investing in another airline, and I always mention that we always go after Goldsmith, and we don't go after scrap dealers. And this is exactly what we did. We went and took, actually we are the single largest shareholder in IAG. We have 10%, 9.99, and this was a reason to be 9.99. It's one of the most successful airline group, and it is extremely profitable. So we decided to invest in this group.
And how do you see that evolving? Because, I mean,
Well, there are a
put it
lot
this
of
way,
synergies
Akbar,
between
you're
us
a
and
strong
them.
personality, Willie's a strong personality, but you can see eye to eye and actually take it forward in a positive way.
Yes, when two strong individuals get together, they become stronger, right?
Yeah.
And this is exactly what happened. We are going to work together with them. There are a lot of synergies between us and them, and we will benefit from each other's size, market reach, and of course the network. And so will be a big benefit also to our One World Alliance.
And you've talked in this context of IAG about joint ventures, and if I'm not mistaken, you do one already on cargo, but would that be likely to develop in the passenger sphere as well?
Most certainly. You know, when you partner with another major airline like IAG, there is so much that we could do together for the benefit of both our airlines.
And another aspect to go slightly off the topic in terms of Qatar Airways, but you as an individual, you're also on the board of Heathrow Airport as a non-executive director because Qatar is an investor. You know, we've got our elections in the UK tomorrow. I've got to rush back today to vote to see if I can influence in any small way on what kind of government we might get. And then the government should decide on this airport commission who is looking into runway capacity in London. Should there be another runway in Heathrow or Gatwick? I think you were quoted in the British press a few months ago as saying there was almost too much democracy in the UK and the airport should be 24 hours a day. Tell us more about your view on Heathrow and Gatwick.
I don't believe in too much democracy at times because politicians look at their personal interest to safeguard their chair in the House of Commons than looking at the bigger interest of the country, the economy, job creation. You know, there are a few people that make noises about noise pollution around Heathrow. I mean, you know, Heathrow has been there for decades. They chose to come and stay near Heathrow. So they should accept a little bit of a noise. And I always tell people that with modern aeroplanes, by the time the runway will be ready, I'm sure you will not be a journalist anymore. I will not be the CEO. Because, you know, in UK it takes centuries for something to happen. It will transform that whole region, that whole area around the airport. And it is so important for the economy of the United Kingdom. Keeping in mind that nearly over 99% of the slots at Heathrow is already occupied, which means that there is a requirement for a runway. I think they should just go along and build one. I'm not privy to talk about this, but I think that it is important that the runway be built soon. The Davis Commission is, I believe, going to give their opinion to the new elected government soon, and I'm very pessimistic for Heathrow as an airline.
Well, certainly Willie is. I mean, he believes it will never happen.
Well, because we want to grow our business at Heathrow, and so does Willie.
You wouldn't go back to Gatwick. You did fly to Gatwick for a period in the past. And then
no,
moved.
we did fly to Gatwick a long time ago because some of our codeshare partners from over the Atlantic used to go into Gatwick. We don't do it anymore now because there are already those partners have access to Heathrow.
And have you met Sir Howard Davis, who's leading this airport
No, I
commission
haven't.
at all? I think he's talked a lot about, he's very aware of developments
You
in the
know, we
Gulf.
have a chairman at Heathrow who is very much involved in this together with the management. We as board members, of course, have full backing for the third runway, but I'm not involved in having direct contacts with him.
Just again, a bit more widely on the industry, consolidation on the one hand, we've talked about the topic of consolidation in America and what's happened with airlines there. Do you think this trend is going to happen more around the world, and would Qatar take part in that, not only as you've done with a stake in IAG, would you look to other areas? You've talked before about India and Indigo, for example.
We will look at other equity holding in other airlines. Why I always talk about Indigo is because it is the best run, most successful Indian carrier. And if there is any opportunity for taking an equity stake in Indigo, we will be very interested. Mr. Rahul Bhatia, who is the owner of Indigo, is a very close friend, and he realizes the synergies that Qatar Airways would bring, and they would bring to Qatar Airways
it was
at
a
the
massive
same time.
link in traffic
Exactly.
between the two. I mean, do you think the days will finally be numbered for Air India itself? Because it seems to just keep being propped up again and again. And,
I didn't.
do you think the days are numbered for Air India? Will Air India at some point disappear,
No,
or will it constantly
I don't
stay
think,
there
I don't think
in
Air
an
India,
unhealthy state?
Air India, like Qatar Airways, is a very important icon of India. You know, Air India has been into business before many of the airlines in the world were ever existed, and they were really once upon a time the premium carrier in the world. You know, they used to call themselves Palace in the Sky.
Yes, that's right.
So I don't think Air India will disappear. It is quite probable that Air India will be reinvigorated by very good, sound, business-minded individuals. And Air India has a huge potential, which is unfortunately not being utilized by the Indian government.
Another wide industry issue. I remember 3 years ago, you were very critical of IATA. Subsequently, you are now actively involved in the running of IATA. Do you think the body is now changing its dynamics to become a more valuable platform for the industry? And what's it going to be like in the next IATA meeting? Because you're going to be there yourself, Willie, the American guys, all cheek by jowl, avoiding eye contact in the corridor.
Air India is, IATA is a completely different organization than what it was before my confrontation with the management of IATA. I sit on both the chair committee and the board of governors. We have done a lot to improve the governance and processes in IATA, but there is still room to improve. There are still things that we can do to better serve the airline community, which we on the board of directors represent.
Do you think there's going to be some heated debates? It's in Miami, isn't it, I think, next month?
Well,
beginning
as
of
far
June.
as I'm concerned, I will not be the one that will initiate that heated debate. But if somebody puts light to the fire, then yes, there will be a lot of fire around at the AGM.
Very interesting. Just again, the last year I was asking Tim, we've had a difficult year from a safety point of view. You know, some very challenging and tragic incidents. Some military actions such as MH17, other mysterious accidents, and of course the most recent tragedy of German wings. What is your feeling, with a lot of industry experience, about what we can learn from this and how we can move forward? It has been a particularly difficult year.
First of all, I would like to show my profound sorrow at what happened to the German wings. My heartfelt condolences goes towards the family of the bereaved, and I also really have a lot of sympathy for Lufthansa. They had to handle this tragic incident. Coming back to the mishaps that happened, again, it is very sad that these occurrences happen. The Malaysian 370, which is still unresolved, and we are very disappointed with the within IATA that IATA is not taking a very vocal part in making a lot of noises in this issue. The aircraft being shot down was again an issue that should have been taken more aggressively by IATA. And the lesson learned from the Malaysian 370 is very important. Again, IATA is not in the driving seat of this, but Qatar Airways, we have developed our own in-house solution, and we have already started tracking our aeroplanes. There are 3 individuals sitting in our operation control center that is constantly tracking our aeroplanes, and the systems is speaking, interrogating the aeroplane every 5 seconds.
Right.
And we get information of every slightest diversion, deviation from the flight plan. All the speeds are monitored, all the major systems in the aircraft is monitored from the ground. I think we are one of the first airlines that have already
And you can
introduced.
maintain that information access even when the aircraft are in very remote areas out of normal radar coverage.
Yes, because it is ACARS based, and if in an instant where an aircraft will switch off its systems, we will immediately, within 5 seconds, get an alert.
Right.
So the aircraft positions will be noted where it stops transmitting, and the aircraft crew will be interrogated by our OCC.
Okay. I could ask you more questions, but I know we're running out of time. You've got to go to a press conference, haven't you?
Yes.
So unless you want to put any other words out there, we've
No,
better stop.
I'm sure some of the individuals
people are
here
gonna
will
go
be in the
across
press
there.
conference, so they can, I can say, cross-examine me at that time.
Okay. Well, Akbar, it's a pleasure again to speak with you today. We'll watch with great interest how things go, specifically in Washington in a week's time, and I'm sure this is going to be a long-running and developing issue. So Akbar Al Baker, Group CEO, or His Excellency Akbar Al Baker, Group CEO of Qatar Airways, thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the last of our seminars. See you next year. Thanks, Akbar.